very, very fun to watch his process unfold in the spring, I think. They've got to do some development along that offensive line. Byrum Brown comes in at quarterback. That's going to be something that people are going to talk about all spring. And when Auburn has been able to find a quarterback, Phillip, it's been gangbusters.
Mm-hmm.
And do they have the next guy in Byrum Brown? You gave up something to get him, right? Like, Deuce was out the door because you brought Byrum Brown in. And there were a lot of people who watched our interview with Alex Golesh, and they thought he maybe took a little bit of a shot at Deuce and saying, hey, there were guys who didn't want to compete with Byrum. But he also acknowledged that it's a hard sell to say to guys that it would be an actual competition with Byrum. I think they have their guy. And if you want to hit the ground running in your Alex Golesh, bringing in Byrum Brown makes so much sense for you because there's no question about whether you believe he can do the things that he needs to do.
Hi, I'm Andy Bertram, voice of the Auburn Tigers, and you're listening to the Phillip Jordan Show podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Phillip Jordan Show podcast. I am Phillip Jordan, writer for the Auburn Wire, and also the former in-studio host producer of Dutchman's Football 96.9. The Legend. Got a fun show playing for you guys today. I'm going to be joined by Mike Gittens over at the War Report. Also, Locked on UCF. I don't think we'll be talking about UCF any. We'll be talking Auburn basketball, Auburn football. A good 15, 20 minutes with Mike Gittens. So I hope you're going. I hope you enjoy it. I think you will enjoy it. I've been looking forward to bringing that to you. Real quick before we jump into our conversation with Mike, let you guys know you can find me in the podcast. Find me on social media at P Jordan Sports. Find the podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review, and I'll read it on a future edition of the show. If you leave us 4 stars, you're just a straight up hater. Check out the show over at the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. And also, you can email me at philipjordanmedia@gmail.com. All right, let's jump into it with Mike Gittens, Mike G, on the War Report. All right, everybody, as promised off the top, I'm joined by Mike Gittens, also Mike G over at the War Report, also Locked on UCF, but I'm sorry, folks. I don't think we're going to talk Central Florida. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that, Mike. Maybe another time. We're going to talk some Auburn football and basketball, but I appreciate you coming on the show. But looking forward to chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Phillip. It's been a little bit of an interesting offseason, I think, with basketball maybe not going the way Auburn basketball fans have been accustomed to. But then on the football side, there was a lot of change, obviously, with Hugh Freeze exiting the Plains and Alex Golesh entering stage left. So it's going to be very, very fun to watch his process unfold in the spring, I think. They've got to do some development along that offensive line. Byrum Brown comes in at quarterback. That's going to be something that people are going to talk about all spring. And when Auburn has been able to find a quarterback, Phillip, it's been gangbusters.
Mm-hmm.
And do they have the next guy in Byrum Brown? You gave up something to get him, right? Like, Deuce was out the door because you brought Byrum Brown in. And there were a lot of people who watched our interview with Alex Golesh, and they thought he maybe took a little bit of a shot at Deuce and saying, hey, there were guys who didn't want to compete with Byrum. But he also acknowledged that it's a hard sell to say to guys that it would be an actual competition with Byrum. I think they have their guy. And if you want to hit the ground running in your Alex Golesh, bringing in Byrum Brown makes so much sense for you because there's no question about whether you believe he can do the things that he needs to do. He just needs to show that on Saturdays right here on the Plains in the SEC.
Yeah, it's kind of funny in a way. Deuce leaves, go to Ole Miss thinking that Trinidad Chambliss is not going to be back. And then
that's the game, right?
He's back and he's going to be starter, so he is still going to be the backup. Kind of like with the Oregon situation with Dante Moore and they brought again from Nebraska. I'm drawing a blank on Patrick Mahomes' twin, little kid son there, but it's the same deal. You see it a lot. These guys have said, "Hey, I'm coming back," and you don't get. It's the risk. It's the risk when you transfer like that.
Yeah, it is. The Trinidad Chambliss thing was so interesting to me. You had. I say this over and over again, but you had what was really the best story in college football last year. This is what I mean about talent evaluation not being an exact science, Trinidad didn't win the starting job coming out of camp. He wasn't even the first one picked there. He ended up being one of the best quarterbacks in college football. They take down Georgia in the playoff, and he made every play they needed to make for that to happen. It's a moving target trying to find your guy at quarterback. There are a few coaches in college football that consistently have been able to do it. Lane Kiffin, you just know no matter what, he's going to end up on his guy at quarterback. That's what makes LSU scary, right? With the resources and the talent that he'll be able to get there versus, stinky Oxford. And then you have, Saban, who went on probably the greatest run of quarterbacks we've ever seen, starting with Jalen Hurts, and then you had Tua, and then you had Mac Jones and Bryce Young and Jalen Milroe. Like, was there a greater run of quarterbacks in a row? I maybe tick Jalen off the end there, but Bryce, Mac was probably the most accurate of the four I just named. Tua took over for Jalen Hurts in a national title game and threw the winning touchdown pass in overtime to win it. Jalen was just a winner, now an NFL MVP. It's not like these guys were scrubs. They had a plethora of options, and they always seemed to pick the right guy to run it, and it turned into championships. Where is that at Auburn? I think that's what we hope Alex Golesh is bringing to Auburn, because it seems like a blue moon. Once every blue moon, it happens. Jason Campbell, great, undefeated. And then we wait, 6 years from 2004 to 2010, and then you get Cam Newton. Bam, great. Then 3 more years from 2010 to 2013, Nick Marshall. And you're back in the national title game. Took 4 years, but we got Jarrett Stidham. Stidham comes, or 3 years from 15 really to or 2 years, right? Or 15 to 17, you get Jarrett Stidham, and you beat Bama and Georgia in the same season. You're one SEC championship, a game away from making the college football playoff. But since then, we thought 2 years later in 2019 that Bo would be the incumbent, and he got gussed a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And since then, it's just been a struggle, right? Like, after Gus left, to find anybody who could play well enough in a system that's been here. Bo had probably the best year at Auburn under Brian Harsin before he got hurt. But he went on to finish his legacy at Oregon. And then since then, Peyton Thorne, Robbie Ashford, TJ Finley, what was the kid's name? Demetrius Davis. Just a lot of, not great quarterback play. A lot of these kids had talent, but did they play great at Auburn? No. And I think you point to coaching. So can Golesh be the guy that solves that? One of the things he said during our interview is he said, when quarterbacks look at this system, they're going to see one that the proof is in the pudding is going to get you to the NFL. I hope that's a promise he can deliver on here. Because if he's getting QBs to the NFL, there's no way Auburn is not in playoff talks every single November. And that's what you need. I don't know if you looked at the schedule, man, but that October slate is as tough as I've ever seen. At Tennessee, at Georgia, home versus LSU, and at Ole Miss, all 4 of those teams will be expected to be playoff contenders next year. And you got them all in 1 month, and 3 of the 4 on the road. That month will define Auburn's season, Phillip. It will. And you could lose all 4 of them if you don't have your act together.
Real quick, kind of on rewind. So no love for Brandon Cox.
You know what? I'm so sorry. You are absolutely right. I mean, he had an 11-2 season. I filmed almost every single one of his college practices. Brandon Cox was such an underrated quarterback in Auburn history, and he wasn't flashy, but he got the job done, and he had a great arm, and he battled some medical issues, on the front end of his career at Auburn, where it was some kind of rare, like, degenerative disease. He was like a bone disease or something. I don't want to speak for Brandon, but lots of love for Brandon Cox. You know who else I have love for is Chris Todd.
Yes. He was there for that bad year, Tuberville's final year, where Tony Franklin came in and all that stuff. But then the next year, Chiswick's first year before Cam come along, he broke the record for passing touchdowns.
He did. Good memory, Phillip. Gus, I give that one to Gus. In Gus's system, he broke Auburn's single-season touchdown passing record. Chris Todd was a smart quarterback. He told us a great story about when he found out he was going to be the starter. We did an interview with Chris, and Chris said, Mike, they were called like after the spring, the fall camp was winding down. They were calling us into the office in the order that we were taking snaps in practice. And because he was going fourth, he thought there's no way. Like if you won the job, they're either calling you in first or last. But if you go in like third or fourth, you're just thinking, yeah, there's no way I won the job. I didn't even move up the depth chart. They don't even care enough to call me in first. And when he sat down and Chizik looked him in the face and said, "You're going to be the starting quarterback at Auburn University next year," the words fell out of his mouth. And he had shoulder surgery. This was an amazing story. He won the starting job in essentially 8 fall practices. That's it. No spring, just walked in the fall after shoulder surgery. And had he not had a hurt shoulder, not only would he have broken the touchdown passing record, Auburn is probably an 11-win team with a healthy Chris Todd. That guy was smart. He knew the game. He had some physical limitations due to injury. It happens to players all the time. But he is one of my favorite Auburn players ever, not because of what he accomplished, but because of who he is, what he had to overcome. And I hope that Auburn brings more high-character guys like Chris Todd back to the Plains under Alex Golesh. Just a high-character guy. He is the guy who embodies the creed, Phillip. We love that about Chris Todd. You know, maybe Byrum Brown's the next one that embodies the creed and has all the physical tools to go out and win the Heisman.
Yeah, and another one which we'll get into because we'll get to the next thing, but I think one of the most disappointing quarterbacks at Auburn, not because of how he left the program. It's just Auburn could never have Sean White healthy for the Iron Bowl. It was always he would get hurt before Georgia or during Georgia, and then Auburn will be stuck with Trot and Jeremy Johnson back out there.
Sean White was such a head case. When he got dismissed from the team, I think it was after like a public intox or something like that. I mean, Gus was trying to send a message that football is not the most important thing in your life, and if we don't send this message now, like we're not doing the right thing for you as a human and a young man. But Sean White and Jeremy Johnson, who was also a really great kid, who man, he had the arm talent. But for some reason it just never clicked. That, bringing up those kids reminds me of a trauma that a lot of Auburn fans have about not being able to develop a guy from high school at quarterback. Where's the heir apparent? It was supposed to be Bo. It crushed Auburn fans for him not to fit. He got his Auburn degree, but he attributes all his college success to what happened at Oregon. Where he won a lot of games. And I just feel like we need those stories from Alex Golesh. After Byrum Brown moves on, I really do hope it's one of the – that's what's sad about Deuce going, because he was a guy who committed to Auburn out of high school, and they were unable to talk him into staying to wait that 1 year to play after Byrum. They really believed in him. So they put a $2 million NIL deal on the table for Deuce, and he walked away from it because he wanted to believe he would be in an actual quarterback competition now. I understand both sides of the coin, because now you're sitting at Ole Miss when you could have just been sitting at Auburn. So if it was just about playing time, maybe you could have stayed put and been in a better situation to take over for Byrum. But the other side of that coin is Chris Todd told us this. They're always trying to bring somebody in that's better than you. So while you're sitting not getting tape, the next stud from the portal is thinking, well, I can go beat out Deuce because look at what I've done on tape. He ain't done nothing. He's been sitting. All his successes in theory, mine is real and on tape. And Deuce is just like any other player, searching for that place where they can get the tape, because that gives you the real power in the portal. Look what I've actually done. So it is. There's a new dynamic here. I think that's hard, and hopefully Golesh knows how to navigate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. It's ever changing with college athletics and the college football, with how all that's going down with portal and everything else. And, talking about Byrum Brown and obviously what Golesh has now put around him. And I look at this running back room when you got Bryson Washington coming over from Baylor, Jeremiah Cobb coming back, and, and Davenport coming over from South Florida too, another guy that they know about. And obviously with Byrum Brown, what he could do, I'm like, Mike, if they just get the offensive line right, this team should be pretty dangerous in the run game. And they've added some good receivers, a lot of them from South Florida, but also have Bryce Kane coming back.
Yeah, let me tell you, during our interview, Alex Golesh said that Byrum Brown is not just a good running quarterback. He's a good runner of the football. He had 175 carries at USF last year. The question that I had was, naturally, would you like him to run the ball less here, Coach? You think? I mean, 175 carries is a lot for anybody. I mean, Jeremiah Cobb, who was the starting running back for a lot of seasons, he had 175 carries last year. Now, I would like to see about 40 of those carries switch from Brown to the running back, distributed amongst the running backs. I don't want my quarterback taking hits like that, not in the SEC. Golesh responded to me, said, well, you don't really want your quarterback taking hits at any level, even if it was high school. And I was like, while that's true, Coach, come on now. You know those hits come harder in the SEC. This is not like running over G5 kids at USF. This is playing Alabama, LSU type players every week. And every hit, you are potentially one hit away from needing your backup quarterback. And I'm telling you, behind Byrum Brown, there's a lot of anxiety. For me, behind Byrum Brown, there's a lot of anxiety there at quarterback. So he's got to run a good quarterback competition behind Byrum Brown as well to make sure that number 2 is ready, because your season cannot go down if Byrum Brown goes down. Auburn can't be in that place. And the better schools have a guy who can step up and get the job done and still win football games. In business, we call it your single point of failure. If you remove that one piece, does the whole operation fall apart? And on a good football team, you don't have too many single points of failure, or you have not recruited and developed well enough. So in year 1, they may have some, and it may be at quarterback, or maybe it's not. And these guys are really, we haven't heard, maybe Hewlett comes in as gangbusters, right? And we just don't know because he hasn't done it yet. But that's what we expected from Jeremy Johnson when we saw him in a little action. Remember when Nick Marshall was suspended for the first half of that Arkansas game? Yeah, and he came and threw for like 3 touchdowns and almost 300 yards and a half. And we're like, oh, we're in good hands. It didn't work out that way. But we saw a flash of the potential that he had. And you hope that Golesh just knows how to get the most out of it. One of the interesting stories I heard, I'm telling a lot of stories from our first time on your show, but
I'm here for it. It's great stuff.
This offseason, Hugh Freeze had a conversation with Tommy Tuberville where he was imploring him to go get Diego Pavia. And he told Freeze, if you don't have a quarterback, you're cooked. Go get Pavia. Go get a guy who can just go out and do it. Right? And they thought they had their guy in Jackson Arnold. And I think Jackson is supremely talented. But for the way that system was running, you needed a guy who was a little better under pressure than Jackson. And that would have been Diego Pavia. I mean, had he gone and got Pavia, he might still have his job here.
Yeah.
Right? You might win 8 games and still have your job.
Yeah, because it feels like, I mean, that was his biggest fumble, that and thinking he should still be called plays. But, that's a different conversation. I think you could do a whole 20 minutes, 30, an hour on that whole deal why Hugh Freeze didn't work out. Because I was the guy I thought it was going to work. I thought it was a good hire. But
absolutely,
we all got proved wrong on that one. Real quick, we're going to let you go. Of course, basketball. And it feels like yesterday they were 14-7. I remember Joe Lenardi had them as a 7 seed, and we look where they're at now, 15-14. They've lost 7 of 8 games. Just lost to Ole Miss, lost to Oklahoma for that. Teams, especially after they beat Kentucky, you got to be thinking, okay, this is turned around. They should beat these teams. Maybe lose to Alabama, but you still put yourself in the tournament. I don't know. For me, sometimes when I watch this team play, I think they have individual ability, but I don't always see the great team play with this group. And they don't have a lot of size. That's one thing, too. And everybody looks like peak Steph Curry when they play against Auburn now, apparently. With Stephen Pearl, first year, I know a lot of conversation on him, with everything, how he got the job, all that. Not here to talk about that really, but just what is your kind of takeaway from Auburn basketball this year under Stephen Pearl, year 1, as we have 2 more games left for Auburn?
We talk a lot about how players develop, but we very rarely talk about how coaches develop. You knew there were going to be some bumps in the road year 1 with a first-year head coach in the situation Stephen Pearl was in. So when you're John Cohen, you make this hire, you had to think, I got to have some grace here for my guy. This was Bruce's roster. He built this roster, so that we're clear. And he built it without a generational big man that he's had the last couple cycles. Stephen Pearl's talked about this with me both publicly and privately, where he said, hey, man, we were blessed with two of the greatest generational big men, Walker Kessler and Janai Broome back to back. We don't have that on this team. So where do we get it? He's developing his management style. I make a lot of parallels between professional and personal, life, because, life when it comes to sports and just, how things work. You talk about players getting paid, for example. Well, a lot of these guys have never been in the workforce before, so they don't know how to negotiate raises, and they think they're worth this and that. And there are people smarter than them that can argue their value better than they can. But the things that they think that they value in themselves is not necessarily what you would argue to the money people for a larger NIL deal, for example. Well, with Stephen Pearl taking over the job, he's got to manage a lot of things that coaches 6-7 years ago, even just as soon as 6-7 years ago, didn't have to manage. Now you have to manage millionaires. And you got to get them to show up and do all these things. We've given kids unlimited resources to be able to go and do whatever they want to do. And to think that would have no effect on the on-court or on-field product is very, very naive. So yeah, I'm having a little bit of an old moment. I was talking to Steven the other day, just texting, and something hit me. I was like, I'm 4 years older than him. I'm 4 years older than a head coach. He's a really young coach in his late 30s, and he is nowhere near the best coach that he's going to be yet. So how much patience is Auburn going to have for that journey for Steven? I think this offseason, what he's going to have to go do is he's going to have to go build a roster that he can coach. Not the one that his dad coached, but the one he can coach. I don't know if you saw, but recently, I guess Chad Baker-Mazara got kicked off of USC. I mean, I would have hated for Steven to have to manage a player like that in his first year. Now, Keyshawn Hall, Tahad, these are good kids. They really are. Really good kids. But he had to bench Keyshawn. He had to bench Tahad. And then he benches Keyshawn Murphy. And so what fans are seeing, they're like, hold on, wait a minute. All your star players are getting benched from the starting lineup at some point this season. I posted the quote. I don't know if you saw it, but I guess Keyshawn Murphy was 20 minutes late to a film session, and that's why he didn't start. And it is hard on fans when you're losing close basketball games and you're sitting here thinking, look at how close you lost that basketball game. You lost that game by 6 points. And if he starts, is he the difference in the game? He's gone out and dropped 25 for you before. You sat Keyshawn Hall for a whole game that you lost. And Tahad and Murphy went off, but you were missing that third scorer, and it could have been Keyshawn Hall. Now, we could argue if Keyshawn Hall plays, maybe those guys don't go off, but they've struggled to find offense when they need it the most. They can score points, but when they need it the most, they struggled to find offense. And I think that Stephen Pearl has made some decisions that have directly led to Auburn winning basketball games. I think there are decisions that he's made that have directly led to Auburn losing basketball games. I think that he has the potential to be an even better coach than his dad. We have to be patient and give him some grace to get through this, man. That's it. Bruce chose to retire when he retired. So if you want to complain that Bruce is here, Bruce is the reason that Bruce is not here. So I don't want to hear that from any fan, right? Like, he put Auburn in a position where Stephen was really the only option. And, that's just a father setting his kids up for success. I won't fault him for doing that, but yeah, now we just have to deal with what we have now. What we have is we have a really good young coach who if we missed the tournament 1 year, is that really the end of the world? If he comes back and wins the SEC next year, he could do that. He's got the resources to do that. So, if he's the type of person that's willing to take a look at his own process and look at where he's at and reflect and be reflective, Phillip, and say, here's where I need to grow as a coach, I think that will pay off for Auburn. But, I hope he never becomes a guy that is consistently trying to stuff a square peg down a round hole, hoping that it just works. That's what Auburn football felt like last year. The inability to be able to evolve and adapt, right? And we didn't see any evolution until after the Kentucky game. And then suddenly it was like, where did all these points come from? I don't think Steven's there. I think he understands where he needs to grow. And I'm very hopeful that the future will be bright for Auburn basketball.
sometimes in sports you have to kind of take a step back, take a step forward, and so that might
I
be
agree.
just for them. Well, anyways, Mike, it's gonna be interesting this week. We'll see what happens. Of course, all Auburn fans want to get a win on Saturday. That would be a good one to close out the regular season that way, going into Tuscaloosa win it. But Mike, I appreciate you coming on. It was a lot of fun talking Auburn, hearing some cool stories too as well. And we kind of went down the quarterback rabbit hole.
We
With Auburn.
we did.
But it was fun. It was fun. I kind of started out with Brandon Cox, so that was kind of on me on that one. But anyways, I appreciate you coming on the show. If the listeners, viewers want to check it out online, where can they find you and all the work you're doing?
You guys know the deal. Follow me on Twitter at Mike Gittens, at Mike Gittens _ on Instagram. You can follow us at The War Report on every social media program. We are TW Rapport on TikTok. Any business opportunities, business at thewarreport.com. We're busy this offseason. The work never stops. Ike and I should be in Nashville for the SEC tournament, and then we've got SEC Media Days coming in Tampa this July, so you don't want to miss our coverage from that. It's always a good time to sit down with Commissioner Sankey and all the other great football minds around the SEC.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys do a great job covering all things Auburn. And again, Mike, I appreciate the time. Hope we can do this again sometime down the road.
Thanks, Phillip. War Eagle.
All right. Once again, thanks to Mike Gittens for coming on. Really enjoyed chatting up. That's 2 weeks in a row. Had a new guest here on the show. So I hadn't been on before. I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to have obviously the regulars, the ones that I've talked to for years, have them still come on the show, but also bring in some different voices and everything. And I really enjoyed it. Go check out the War Report. They do a great job covering all things Auburn over there. All right. So before we go here, we were talking about the Auburn running back room and what this team could be. Obviously, with Byrum Brown at quarterback, who run for over 1,000 yards last year, 14 touchdowns, for South Florida. Jeremiah Kyle coming back. I thought that was just a huge, huge get for Auburn to get him back on this team. Ran for 969 last year and 5 touchdowns. Then Omar Mabson and Alvin Henderson are two to come in. We saw a little Mabson last year. I think he struggled sometimes at pass blocking, and then Alvin Henderson, look down here where I'm at, talked about him a lot on the Wiregrass High School Football Report when he was playing there at Elba. He's a talent. Let's see what happens there with him. But bringing in Bryson Washington, who didn't have as big of a year in 2025 as he did in 2024. In 2025, ran for just 788 and 6 touchdowns. The year before that, ran for over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. And Davenport coming over from South Florida, 6'12", 7 touchdowns with what he could do. So Auburn has a lot of good things there at that position. And you talking about with Mike there about the Auburn schedule for next year. And he is right. The month of October is extremely difficult. But, the first month of the year, you play Baylor in Atlanta, Southern Miss. I think Auburn should win both of those games. I really believe the game on the 19th against Florida is a swing game. If Auburn can win that one, start 3-0. Of course, going to get John Sumrall, new head coach there at Florida. If Auburn can get a win there, you're 3-0. And then you head in again at home playing against Vanderbilt. No Pavia, no Hugh Freeze versus Pavia matchup. So perhaps Auburn can finally get one with Vanderbilt. Of course, the last 2 times they lost to them. But then you look at that October schedule. At Tennessee, then you're off. At Georgia, LSU, at Ole Miss. They have got to get one of those. And where can they get one? Maybe Tennessee, because we don't know really what their quarterback situation is going to look like now there, where they have an opening at that position. And then maybe LSU. We'll see with them against Lane Kiffin. That's a new building team. At Georgia, at Ole Miss. I mean, you got to find one in there. I think Tennessee's probably your best bet, but you also don't want to lose 3 in a row. And then you have Arkansas and at Mississippi State. So right now it's looking at Auburn. So if you can win the Florida game, I think that would jumpstart you into Vanderbilt. So you would go 4-0. If you only win one game in October, that puts you at 5-3. You should beat Arkansas. You should beat Mississippi State. So that gets you at 7 wins on the year. And then you get Samford, and that should get you to 8. Then you close up Alabama. So if Auburn 8 wins is doable. More likely, you would probably see 7, but 8 is a possibility, I think, because they may lose one of those games in September, perhaps to Florida or Vanderbilt. I don't think they lose to Baylor or Southern Miss to start the year. So I think Auburn will be good there. In basketball, Joe Lunardi, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier when Auburn was 14-7. He had them as a 7 seed. Now they are one of the first 4 out. So obviously this week is pivotal for Auburn basketball. They need to get some wins. They need to beat LSU in a late night game on Tuesday night, 9 o'clock. Now, I am thinking about live reacting to the Auburn basketball game on Tuesday night. So that'll be a late night podcast, 11:30. I still got to write an article on it. We'll see. We'll see how that goes with that. And then you play Alabama on Saturday, 7:30. Obviously, you beat LSU, you beat Alabama. That really puts you right back into it. And if you just beat LSU, lose Alabama, you're going to have to do some damage in the SEC tournament to get into there. And so we'll see how it goes. You know, there's some people think this Auburn team doesn't want to be there. We'll see. We'll see how that kind of mood and the way this team plays on Tuesday night first against LSU. I have said stuff. You know, Stephen Pearl has shown some good things this year, and also again shown some things that make you wonder. But he is a first-year head coach. A lot of pressure, I think, will go on him this offseason to revamp and rebuild this roster. Get some more bigs, just kind of build it what he wants. I won't be surprised if it's a brand new roster once again. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if the Todd Pettiford will be back. I've kind of made a prediction. I think he might be somebody you could see leave, get a fresh start somewhere else after this year. Didn't really work out for him after last year. He was the guy that toyed with the NBA draft. But Stephen Pearl did talk on Monday, and he also talked about they control their own destiny. Like I just said, look, you can win these next 2. You should be in, and then you got the SEC tournament. So, but Auburn right now, as what we've seen the last 2 games, and really for the last over a month, this is not a tournament team. This team should not be a tournament team, but we'll see if they can turn around. There's 2 games left, so there's still opportunity there to get into the dance. Now, SEC football, a couple of things. A former Kentucky head coach, Mark Stoops, is going to join the Texas Longhorn staff. He'll be special assistant to head coach Steve Sarkisian. He's obviously spent 13 years there at Kentucky. Just had Kevin McGuff from Last One College Football. We talked about him a lot in the recent one of my more recent episodes. Good addition to your staff. He was a good defensive coach before he ever was a head coach at Kentucky. And at the same time, you got a guy that's got head coaching experience. So, and Texas has really been making an effort to really bolster up their staff and this team. They are making a run, obviously, for a championship. And then Tennessee head coach Josh Heupel told Chris Lowe over of On 3 he wants a 2014 playoff. He thinks that's kind of where it's going with everything. Look, I don't want that. I don't agree with that. I don't think they should go to a 2014 playoff. I think we really just devalue the regular season if you do that. But I think that might be where this is headed when it comes to that eventually. Maybe not soon, but eventually they would go there. And that's really what the Big Ten wants to do anyways. So I'm really, really against that. Anyways, I got out of here. Plan, I said I have something later on in the week. But also, I will do a podcast next week. It's up in the air if you'll get any audio content the week after that, because on March 14th, I'm getting married. We'll be going on the honeymoon the following week. Yes, I know that is the week of the NCAA tournament. But I won't have a podcast. I won't do a new episode recording that week. So if I can, I will try to record something next week that can play that following week. Or you just may get a best of. We'll see. I have plenty of past interviews I could probably play here on the channel and on the show. So that's kind of what that's going to be about. Auburn playing LSU on Tuesday night, 9 o'clock, some late night basketball. So we'll be all in for that on Tuesday night. All right, I'm going to get out of here. Again, thanks to Mike Gittens for coming on from the War Report. Really enjoyed our conversation on this podcast. And again, please go check out his work. Check mine out over at P. Jordan Sports. Obviously, I write for the Auburn Wire, part of USA Today. Also, you can check out this pod wherever you listen to podcasts. For some reason, last week's episode spot, I've been having some issues with Spotify lately, uploading episodes and all that stuff. But hopefully, this one will be on there. If not, it will be on Apple Podcasts. So that is for certain there. Also, YouTube, Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. And please email me if you have any questions at phillipjordanmedia@gmail.com. Everybody has a great Tuesday. Till next time.